Hi, folks. Steve Urban here from the Riderflex podcast. Today's episode is proudly sponsored by two companies I'm deeply involved with. First up, Robo Reliance, your trusted partner for nationwide robot maintenance and repair, specializing in humanoid and autonomous robots for homes and businesses. Visit roboreliance.com to learn more. And for all your home maintenance needs, there's Cura Home Maintenance of Colorado. From air duct cleaning to dryer vent cleaning to gutter cleanouts and much more. Check them out at curahomeservices.com. And finally, don't forget about the two books we've published in the Riderflex Guide series. The first being the Riderflex Guide, Inspiring and Hiring. This one is targeted at all types of managers and supervisors, anybody that interviews and hires people. And the second one, the Riderflex Guide 2.0, Mastering Job Interviews, designated to help all levels of job candidates prepare for and ace the interview. And now for today's episode. Please subscribe and enjoy. That's
What
pretty
time
funny.
is it where you are, Steve?
I know, right? You know what? I had a late night last night, Matthew. I was wining and dining a potential investor for another gig we're doing. And yeah, I shouldn't have ordered that third cocktail. That's
Tis the season to be merry. We're
well,
there.
the third one was yeah, Anyway, Matthew, welcome to the show. Thank you, sir. Appreciate you being on the Riderflex podcast. Nice to meet
Hey,
you.
thanks for the opportunity to come on. Yeah, absolutely. Great to meet you.
We're recording this on November 20th. Let's see. We got the holiday decorations there behind you. I like that. I mean, hey, you're looking festive.
We're getting started early around our house.
I had to put up mine too. My son and his fiance are coming over for Thanksgiving, and Kim is my wife, and I mean, we just now put out the Thanksgiving decorations,
Right.
and she's like, no, I really want the tree up too. And okay. So
The
had to
the
do.
quick story on my end is we had some flooding in our house.
Oh,
And so we are moved into a rental property for the next 3 to 4 months
oh,
instead of being at our own house. And we decided that Christmas was coming early. Like we were going to take every excuse we could to have some joy and lights and candles and like whatever it took. So yeah, Christmas came early to the Daniel household.
man, I'm sorry to hear about the flooding. Was pretty bad, huh?
Yeah, not great. $75,000 in damage. Woo!
Oh my
So
gosh.
yeah, an 89-cent piece on the back of a toilet, $75,000 worth of damage. So anyhow,
Wow.
look,
Wow.
I was thankfully on sabbatical whenever that started, and have just been able to use that time to get things going. But all that to say, we are bringing joy. We are looking at the bright side of things at the moment instead of what's not working out great.
What were you gone for a few days? Is that what happened?
Yeah, so
I see.
so uh,
Okay.
Guild, the company I work for, once you've been there for 4.5 years, Guild gives a 5 week sabbatical for you to just go do whatever. And so I had big plans on the sabbatical. The first week of sabbatical, we made one trip and then we went to Toronto. And we came home and I heard a scream from in the house. I hadn't even gotten in yet, and it was my wife yelling that
Uh,
the joint on the supply line in the back of the toilet apparently had been going for, I don't know, at least 3 days of the four that we had been gone, probably
Killer,
all four. So we ended up
killer.
with something like 1,800 gallons of water pouring through the house while we were on vacation.
Wow. You know what? It's so
So,
funny you mentioned the scream. So when we're gone, we'll go on long camping trips and stuff. We have a RV we like to get out in and work remotely for a few weeks. It's so funny you mentioned that. Every time we come back, if Kim goes in the house first, I'm always just kind of waiting there a few
there's
seconds
dread.
to see like, okay, what is it?
There's dread that just fills you. I will tell you, in whatever is happening next, we're going to put one of those like turn the water off to the whole house kind of
Yeah.
deals. We're not going to do this again.
Matthew, tell us a little bit. I know you live in Tennessee, right? Nashville, I think, right?
That's right. That's right.
Where are you from originally?
Yeah, I grew up in rural Arkansas, a little town
Okay.
called Whitehall, Arkansas,
All
5,000
right.
folks.
All right.
Uh, and that's where I grew up, and I've been in Nashville now for I guess 18 years. But that was childhood, and that is what formed me. Yeah.
Yeah. Tell me about your folks, your siblings. Give me a little background.
Yeah. Um, so I'll do this part of the story, which is that my biological father, my mom, got pregnant when she was a junior in high school, delivered me
Okay.
between her junior and senior years of high school,
Wow.
and my biological father was a worker on a coal plant, and he died of leukemia when I was 6. And so all of that kind of formed me. My mom remarried to an amazing man who has now adopted me and my younger brother.
That's cool.
Uh, yeah, which is awesome. And so we are one and the same. He is not stepfather. I am the oldest of four now. He had two. My mom had two,
All
and
right.
so there are four of us. And my dad, I'm going to say dad
Yeah.
means,
Right.
that biological, not the
Yeah.
biological, but the one who
Yeah.
adopted me. Dad is was a pastor all through
Mhm.
growing up. He was a youth
Okay.
and worship minister.
All right.
And my mom, both of them went to college, never graduated, had good jobs, but not great jobs. And my mom did some like basic software coding is where it ended up. She did some basic coding when it was all said and done, and then my dad was in ministry for many years, and then he left ministry, and they've been kind of serial entrepreneurs since then.
Well,
Kind of some things on the side, and then that became, buying a truck and doing some trucking work, and then now they own a Kona franchise. They're still in Central Arkansas, so that's them. And all of my siblings are still home in Arkansas, not far away, but far enough that I'm the kid. And this is so funny when you think about some of the cities I go to, but I'm the one who went
uh,
away to the city,
yeah.
and everybody else stayed home. So
Uh,
actually, super looking forward to getting home with them next week. But those are
okay.
my people, and I am the first. You'll hear this all the way through because I think this is a big part of what drives me in the work that I do is I'm the first on both sides of my family to be a college graduate. Both my
Nice.
my mom and her siblings, she was one of four. My dad and his siblings, and it just was never a question. I was going to go grow up and go to college, but actually, none of my siblings have graduated from college, and it's just not expected where you grow. Like where I grew
Yeah.
up, there
Hmm.
aren't many people who leave the state. There aren't many people who you marry super young, which is why my wife and I married. We actually celebrated our 20th anniversary yesterday. We got married at 21.
Nice.
And so anyway, those are my people. That's where I come from, and I couldn't be more grateful that that's where I came from.
Well, I can relate, my friend. I grew up in Oklahoma, so yeah, they teach us growing up in Oklahoma in the late 70s and early 80s, you don't really have to go to college and you can have kids as soon as you turn 18, basically.
That's it, right? Yeah, it's about getting to adulthood quickly. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, yeah. And you're right, and a lot of people don't leave. What were you going to do with that history major, my friend? Were you going to be a teacher? What was the plan there? Just curious.
Yeah, well, I two things. First, I was gonna be a teacher. At least that's what I thought I was gonna do.
Okay. All right.
Most importantly, I had, taken some like concurrent credits in high school and done some traveling, and like it was the way I could get out of college the quickest.
Oh,
If I'm
uh,
honest, like I looked
all right.
across all the programs and I thought this is one I'll enjoy. I love history. I'll go teach. It'll be a fine job. Um, and then the other thing was, I thought, honestly, I thought I'd go into ministry. I'd follow in my dad's footsteps and go into ministry.
Oh,
But
really? Okay. Wow.
I
All
knew
right.
that I wanted to have a college degree to fall back on if anything ever changed. And it turned out I never actually I never got into full-time ministry whenever I graduated from
I
from
see.
college. But it was the thing I could get out of school in 3.5 years instead of four, and I could get married to my high school sweetheart, and we could move on with life. And so that was the goal, was to get out of college, not to get much from it.
So your faith has was with you as a kid and as a young man. How about now?
Oh yeah, you are going to get to the personal stuff.
Uh,
Yeah, it is. It's a journey. I guess the way that I would say that is, man, I love Jesus. I have spent a lot of years in leadership in churches, and as a result, am not always so warm and fuzzy on the experience. I've served on, vestries at different churches, and I've wandered
Yeah.
around from, good charismatic to the high church Anglican. I've spent some time in different places, and in
Okay.
the end, I think I have become very discouraged with a
Yep.
lot of what I have experienced and
Yeah.
see. And I guess having a daughter, I have a 7-year-old, um, and having her makes me so cautious about what is coming, what are the influences that she hears and sees, which has
Hmm.
made me really careful about how I engage with church spirituality. We talk
Mm.
about it a lot.
Mm. Mm.
She's even at a Montessori school
Oh,
where there
really?
is like a spiritual kind of influence
Okay.
at the school, but we're just really thoughtful about how we do it because we want to make sure some of that kind of ugly spiritual abuse just doesn't carry over from generation to generation. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's still there. It still plays a part in the way I think about a lot of things. It's part of um, it's part of this, right? Like I grew up teaching every Sunday and Wednesday, right? Like from the time I was 14, 15 years old, I was leading. We were in a church that was kind of what they call a small group church or cell group church. And so I started leading small groups when I was 12 and started teaching others when I was 14 or 15. And so
Nice.
it built
Yeah.
so many of the skills I needed
For sure.
for my
Absolutely.
career that
Hmm.
carried forward.
Yeah. I grew so same thing, right? I grew up in Oklahoma. My mom
Oh
was
yeah.
full blown. She wasn't Pentecostal, but she was Assembly of God, basically. Well,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
and I feel almost the same. And I'm not just saying that because you're a guest on the show. Like I feel almost the same. Like I just like dealing with the church per se, like and going and dealing with the leaders and the pastors and the deacons and stuff. It's like I really don't know if I want to do that. I don't mind having a relationship on my own privately. I have a relationship,
Yeah.
and that's I'm good. I'm good with that.
Yeah. I think what I am is so grateful that that's where I grew up, right?
Yeah,
Like the
yeah, sure.
pastor that I had for so many years growing up, he's a Dale Carnegie kind of how to win friends and influence people.
Okay,
We
yeah,
went to leadership classes almost every week. It was just a part of who we were, the
good
culture
training,
of the
man. Good
church.
experience for you. Yeah,
Oh my God,
yep,
right?
yep,
So
yep. Hmm.
it is the thing that formed me, and I'm so grateful for the experience. There,
That's cool.
it was all about like believing that you were capable of leading from a young age, which kind of set me in motion to have, to start working at a young age, to have a lot of
Yeah.
jobs and like build skills and figure out what my interests were and figure out where
So
to go
you
next.
so you were going to be a teacher originally.
Yeah.
And then walk us through kind of, you don't have to touch on each step of your career, but kind of walk us
Yeah.
through some of your career a little bit.
Yeah, I'll do it in fast forward motion, which is just the area that I grew up in. There aren't a whole lot of employers. I wanted to stay local.
Okay.
There aren't a whole lot of employers, so I wanted to work on the Pine Bluff Arsenal because that was the major employer in the local
I,
area that
I
I
see.
was. Yeah, and so there was a Homeland Security contract there where they did training, and there was just enough overlap between I was going to be a teacher and what the contract was, which was training first responders on how to detect weapons of mass destruction. This is shortly post 9/11. And so that was the company. And once I was maybe 3 months into it, and I went through my first course on how to deliver training, I realized that all that stuff I'd done in the church for years, there's
Sure.
actually like science and
Yeah.
methodology behind
Hmm.
it. And
Hmm.
I fell in love with it because ultimately that thing that I was raised with, which was like, how do I make people better? That's the job of ministry, is just to form
Hmm.
people to be better and give them better lives as a result. The Venn diagram is tight with this world of talent development and investing in people. And
Hmm.
so I fell in love with it. I was at a company called GP Strategies, and GP does a ton of contract work, public sector, private sector, and basically gave me 8 years of pinging around between Homeland Security, DoD, the VA, Cigna, Microsoft, like big pharma, big oil, software, everything in between. Usually, folks called GP when they were going through big transformation. And
Okay.
so I had this like, I was developing skills on how to develop other people, but I was also learning this kind of change management and essentially running into fires when everybody else was running out. That was part of the job. When it got really hard and gnarly, it was time to lean in.
Mm.
And
Hmm.
so I did that for a number of years. Then there was a skill set I felt like I was missing. I'd always been on the outside and thought, I want to be on the in. Like, I could see that sometimes as a consultant, you give advice and, they just glaze over. And
Sure.
you're just like, they're saying, what the hell are you talking? Like you've never done this. Obviously, you don't know what it's like to live on the inside of a Fortune 100. So, go away 20 something. And so I decided I wanted to go in-house at a large company, and shortly thereafter took a role at Capital One, leading a number of different teams in the learning and talent development space, and really grew there. And eventually there was a moment, and again, I'm just going to like fast forward through
Sure.
all the different kind of responsibilities that came with that. But ultimately at the end of that, I thought, I'm done at Capital One, but I don't know what's next. And I thought, well, maybe I'll do some consulting on the side. And that started a 2-year journey of building my own business I was scared to death to do it. It was a blast, man. I fell in love with it. It was really great. And I spent 2 years consulting on talent development and HR tech strategy and that kind of thing, because that's some of the work I'd done at Capital One and at GP Strategies before that. And had fun doing that. And then I got a call, right? Somebody at Capital One, we were going through all this digital transformation and we were starting to play more and more in the Bay Area. And I was starting to get familiar. I mean, you don't know anything about any of that, or at least you didn't when I grew up in Arkansas. Like that's
Yeah.
the idea of, there are lots of people who own a local business, but that whole ecosystem of venture and investors and
Yeah.
what that looks like, I had no idea. So when I got a phone call, there was it's called a venture lab, right? This model where you essentially have a consulting business. They go out, talk to folks, find a problem that a lot of people are having, and start building a platform to solve that. And so this company called Entangled called me, and I said, no thanks. Like business was booming. I just signed massive contracts. I mean, I was going on triple or quadruple the salary that I had at Capital One within 18 months. Like it
Cool.
was fantastic. I was, bringing on 1099s to work with me. I was feeling great
Yeah.
about it. And then I got this call, and I kept saying no. I kept saying no. And he said, his name's Paul Freeman, and he was the CEO. And he said, look, you have great ideas, but you're always limited in scale when you do it on your own.
That's true.
Um, why don't you let me give you a staff and you can train them in the way that you want to do this, and we can build it really big. And also, as a partner in this consulting practice, you'll get to help build products, right? And I had gone through taking the folks who worked at me at Capital One and teaching them product, learning about product myself, teaching them about product, and converting their roles from like technology owners to product owners. And it got really, I mean, it was fun. It was fun to think about new products and think about what do we build, what do we buy, how do we borrow, what do we take. And so the idea that I could work at this Bay Area company, I could live in Nashville, work at this Bay Area company, get to fly in, help found new platforms. Some were going to fail, some were going to succeed. But more than anything, I was building sweat equity and sure, a really great income on that business where I was doing services. That's where I thrive is
Mhm.
consulting and services. But ultimately, I was exhausted 2 years into it. I was really tired. I made some bad decisions as an entrepreneur around where to farm things out. I held on to too much
Okay.
way early in the process, and we could talk more about that in a minute. But I held on to too much. I was afraid that the next contract wouldn't come, and so I was really tired. And so his call finally, he called probably the third or fourth time and said, "Just come out and meet." And I went out and spent some time. I talked with a friend was one of the product owners that had spun out from this venture lab. And I said, yes, let's go on this adventure and see what I can learn, right? It's another chance to grow and learn. And 4 or 5 months after I started there, the CEO called me up and said,
We're out of
"Hey,
cash.
I want to let you know we've been acquired."
Oh, okay.
And I said, "I'm I'm sorry, what? Do you know what I walked away from to come be a part of this?" And
Mm.
he said, "We've been acquired by this company called Guild, and it's a rocket ship, and you want to be a part of it." And I said, "No, no, I don't want to be a part. If I wanted to be a part of it, I would have called them. I didn't want to be a part of it. I wanted to build this
Uh,
thing. I wanted to build a lot more products." And so anyway, I ended up
yeah,
at Guild, and that's how that story goes.
gotcha. Okay, thank you very much for walking us through some of that. I appreciate it. Before we get into Guild, let's dive a little bit into change management and transitional stuff. We could do a whole show on this next question, but just in general, why do why do you think the average employee just pushes back on change? Is it because of fear? Is it because they're comfortable? What in general, why do you think it's just so hard for employees to wrap their heads around change?
Yeah, I think if you asked me this question 5 years ago and today, I'm going to give you different answers.
Okay.
5 years ago, I would say it was mostly wrapped up in like an aversion to change. And especially like it's the who moved my cheese concept, right? If
Mm-hmm.
like I've got
Yes.
to now take the processes that I've done maybe for years in a system and I know it, I'm an authority in this topic, and you're essentially stripping from them maybe some of their ownership. You're
Mm-hmm.
stripping from them uh, their comfort. You're stripping from them their relevancy to the business, right? And so I think people are less averse to change for that reason today. I think everybody in a SaaS-based world, everybody has like, okay, it's just all going to change on us all the time. So I can't sit back there. And I think this is where Carol Dweck's work on growth mindset is so powerful. I think I went through my own changes at Capital One when we were going through digital transformation and reading that book. Man, I had a boss I couldn't stand, but she recommended that I read that book, and it was the best thing I got out of that relationship for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is what I would have said a few years ago. I think now there's change fatigue, right? Like I think we moved largely past the overall. I mean, there are still pockets of people who are going to be laggards and don't want to adopt new technology, and they're always going to be averse to it. But I think a lot of people have recognized that systems and tools are going to change around, and processes are going to change, businesses are going to change. You either change or you don't get it. But ultimately, I love the folks over at Red Thread Research. They do a lot of research in the HR space, and the number of platforms that are now adopted in the learning space in any given company, it's usually something like 2 dozen, and that's a lot of freaking systems to know how to use and touch. And so there's actually change fatigue, and you get on the other side of COVID, there's like, what is the process? Oh, great. And now the company is laying off. We see the layoffs across so many folks, so many industries, so many sectors.
Mm-hmm.
And so work is shifting. And I think now we're getting to a point where people are just really tired of constant change. Frontline
Yeah.
workforce, especially tired of just like constant change in
Mm-hmm.
process and systems.
Mm-hmm. Well, you might have a tough job ahead of you then, because I think more change is coming. Unfortunately, with
Yeah.
let's move kind of let's drift into the transformational period we're in due to AI and
Yeah.
technology. I mean, uh, yeah, there's more change coming. And I think a lot of employees are going to be affected not only with their tactical duties or their processes, in some cases, their job, and they're going to have to be retrained or reallocated, et cetera. So I think I think anybody that's in your line of work
Yeah.
around re-educating and change management and stuff is got plenty of stuff to do over the next 3 to 5 years
Yeah.
because we're in a brave new world.
Yeah, we are. And I think it's like there are two versions of this, right? There's the version that obviously folks have to learn how to interact with AI. But if we're honest, really good AI means that I shouldn't take a ton of effort, right? Good UX and UI means that it shouldn't take a ton of effort. There are people like us who are going to start playing with GPTs, and we're going to look at Claude versus Chat GPT, and we're going to figure out what works well for
Early
us.
adopters, early
Yeah,
adopters.
yeah.
I put myself in that group.
Yeah, most people aren't going to do that, and
That's
frankly,
right.
I think a lot of people aren't going to need to, right? It's going to be embedded in the systems and tools around them. I think what is most important, this is as a person who is focused on developing the workforce. I think what's most important right now is the durable skills that people have, right? Do you have the things that when the systems change around you, are you good at communication? Do you know how to problem solve? Uh, do you know how to handle change management? Are you somebody who works with empathy? And so I think this is where there's been a large part of the workforce that companies have not invested in that part of the skill building that's really necessary.
Yep.
And I think if we being people developers in large and small companies, if we don't double down on getting people those durable skills, it's we got a lot of hard years in front of us
I just, I,
with even our workforce being relevant. Like there's not if you study I love the numbers. Um, if we didn't have immigration, we would have lost about 400,000 employees from the workforce last year.
mm, mm,
Immigrants actually make up
mm,
almost the entirety of net positive growth of
mm,
the workforce and have now for a couple of years. And that's about to get worse. Like that
mm,
thing is going to continue to get worse. So you can't go farm. You can't buy your way through recruiting every problem. Like you will have to buy specialized skills and you will have to supplement at moments. I know that's your business.
mm.
But you also have to figure out how am I going to develop the people I have? I can't afford to lose everybody whenever AI
Mm,
changes around
mm,
them. So I've got to
mm,
build some of
mm.
those durable skills in them.
Yeah, that's good news for you and Guild for sure. I saw I think it was in the Wall Street Journal this morning. I think there was I can't remember the name of the article, but it was something like why executives don't want to hire Gen Z, but it was tied to the lack of EQ. It was tied to the lack of
Yeah. Yeah.
soft skills and people skills. Like not that I don't want to I'm not trying to bucket Gen Z all in the same category, but the reality
Yeah.
is, yeah, a lot of soft skills to be desired there. And the article is basically saying, gosh, we have got to do a better job of some EQ training with some of these folks. And you're right. The lack of people skills, Matthew, it blows me away. I mean, I'm just constantly shocked by it. It's unbelievable. Hell, if anybody's listening to this episode, uh, I think start an EQ consulting firm. You just just teach basic people skills for God's sake. It's golly.
One of the things that I wanted to do on this sabbatical, between packing up my house and moving and all the other things I was doing, um, there's a book, The Anxious Generation, and so
Mm,
I've been listening to it on audio,
okay.
and it essentially talks about there are a lot of concepts in it, and I won't go into a lot of it, but how we have two kids who have grown up over the past 10, 12, 15 in the world of social media. They've been
Yeah.
overprotected, right? I,
Yeah.
I I think I'm a little bit younger than you. But I rode my we just had to be home by the time the lights were on,
Pretty
right?
much.
Or my
Yep.
mom had a whistle
Yep.
that you could hear for miles. She would stand on the back porch and whistle, and you just knew it was time to haul and like get home. And we live in a world where we have, with our own kids, overprotected them in the real world. We don't give them enough freedom. They're not exploring enough. They're not connecting with, neighbors down the street because we're nervous. We're afraid of predators. We're
Yeah.
so cautious about that. But we're giving them lots of freedom, sometimes too much freedom. We're putting phones in the hands of young folks. They're young, the brain's not fully
Yeah.
developed, and here we are
Yeah.
handing that phone, and we're not doing a great job. We as parents are not always doing a great job of protecting them. So it's where overprotecting them in the real world, where they build empathy and they learn how to problem solve and they learn how to communicate. because they're off with four kids in the neighborhood and they get into a fight or a
Yeah,
disagreement and they have to work that out.
exactly.
We're protecting them from that when we really need to build those skills. Meanwhile, we're doubling down on digital skills where you can exit the chat room or the DM the moment that you're uncomfortable. And in the real world, you don't get that. You
That's
have to
right.
figure out how to press through. You have to figure out how to find common ground with the person on the other side. I think that has been, you know, that's been something we have to be careful of with our own kids. I,
Totally
I
agree.
was I was at the edge of millennial, so I'm not going to take too many swipes at Gen Z. I remember what it's like for everybody to say, "Oh, these
Uh,
damn millennials and all the problems they bring to the workforce." But I think that is something we've got to watch for.
it's another thing we could do a whole show on. Has social media and phones been uh is there more negative to society than positive?
Woo,
If you had,
woo. That's a big
you
topic
know,
right there.
it's
That's
a
an all
tough
day
one,
kind of
it's
topic.
like,
But
wow, yeah. It's great to, hey, it's great to have this device
yeah,
that has more knowledge than any other single human being on the planet that you can just ask it anything
yeah.
within seconds and get answers. That's really cool. But boy, there's lots of negatives too.
There are, and you still, it also means that we as human beings, especially folks who are working, we've got to be in this continuous mode of learning. Like we have to keep up with
Yeah.
everything going on around us. You can't earn a degree and be done. You can't get that next credential. You
Mm,
can't
mm,
just take a course online this month
yeah.
and say, yeah,
Yeah.
mission accomplished, right? It is like it's constantly moving and shifting around
For
us.
sure. It's changing so fast right
Yeah.
now. Hey, if you've taken one of those Coursera courses on learn how to prompt GPT, well, that's cool, but next month it's out of date.
Yeah. Steve, I don't take them on Coursera. I work at Guild. I,
Oh,
I
that's
go
right.
through our
Sorry. I
programs.
meant to, yeah,
What are you
whoops.
saying here,
Well,
Steve?
I'm
Come
sorry. We
on
had to
now.
edit that out.
No,
That's
I mean,
hilarious.
yes, but more
Uh,
importantly, I play
uh,
with those things, right? That's how I learned so much
yeah,
of that
yeah.
piece. But yeah,
You know,
it changes.
I can't even keep up, Matthew. And I consider myself pretty yeah, I'm an early adopter primarily because I'm in the recruiting space, so I have to stay up with what's going on from a job market and recruiting
Yeah.
and quite frankly how AI is affecting my own industry. I have to pivot and make changes or else I'll be left behind. And so I'm really, I read every book, I watch every podcast, I really try to stay on top of it. But man, I mean, every week there's something new.
Yeah.
And
And recruiting, you're right. Like your field in particular,
yeah,
it is the tip of the spear
yep,
in
yep,
AI.
yes,
And it's also being watched, right? You've got the
yes.
regulators watching it like a hawk. Just because it moves inside a black box doesn't mean that we can't know what's happening there and break how we have to make sure we're doing the right thing from an EEOC thing. So yeah, you do have to watch it.
Be interesting to see what happens, not to go down a giant rabbit hole on AI, but you know, will regulation stop the advancement or slow it down? Don't know. There's been so many people say, "Hey, generally, I'm not for regulation. And most of the time, I would vote against it, but in some cases, I feel like it is necessary because it could get scary if we don't regulate some things. I mean, you got some of the smartest people on planet Earth saying, "Hey, yeah, we might want to regulate some of this shit."
Right. When the really smart folks are like, "Hey, everybody, we should probably create some guardrails." Yeah,
Yeah,
my take on this, I don't think this is going to be much of a hot take. I think in a Trump administration, we're not going to see a whole lot of regulation in that AI space. There's going to be a lot of, and I think that you have to be really thoughtful. I'm a big fan of Pivot Podcast, Kara Swisher and
ah,
Scott Galloway. I'm sure you
okay,
listen,
yeah,
and they talk a lot about how tight the regulations have gotten from a European standpoint on
yeah,
AI and the
yeah,
concerns about where that limits. I mean, when you think about the kind of innovation coming out in different pockets around the world, we are a hotbed of innovation. We've got our problems here, but
Totally.
like for all the things we don't, sometimes folks fall on different sides of um, regulation, but we really are a business friendly country. That's look.
Yeah.
I mean, I have a my brother-in-law is about to. I think he's about to start a business, and I just said, man, there's no better place in the world. Being a small business owner,
Agreed.
this country tilts in your favor. We have done a lot of work to make sure that people can start businesses. But yeah, this is one of those areas that I think if we don't get good guidance on and put some guardrails around it,
Could get
we may
scary.
not be
Could
ready
could
for the implications.
we might have to call Sarah Connor and have her come. I don't know. I'm referring to the Terminator movies.
Oh, I know. I hope that's not where we're going.
Uh,
Yeah.
what do you think, beyond just the regulation piece, what about jobs? So
Yeah.
I've had so many people on this show and they're on one spectrum or the other, right? They're like, oh, it's going to be a world of abundance and it's all going to be fine. And AI and robotics are going to eliminate a bunch of jobs, but that's totally cool because we're all going to be on universal basic income and everything's going to be great. And then I got the other people that are, on the Terminator. Oh my
Yeah.
God,
Yeah.
robots are going to kill us all. And so where are you in this debate?
You'll find, Steve, I love to live life in the middle. Nuance is my friend. It makes for boring conversations, but
Uh,
nuance is my friend.
you're
Look,
so,
here's
yeah,
here's here's what we see. I mean, people are already losing their job. I think there
yeah,
are a lot of companies who are out there saying they're painting sunshine and rainbow about where things are going with AI, and I personally don't buy it. Like, I think we're already seeing impacts. We've lived through this. You and I've been in the workforce long enough. We've seen the impacts of automation. We've
yeah,
seen how,
mhm,
but we've also seen how it does open up new jobs. So I think I live in the middle of, like, I don't think that what we're coming for is really the loss of a ton of jobs from the marketplace. As a matter of fact, I would just say when we look at what's happening with our population, AI could save us in a number of areas where our population is dwindling. And
okay,
so we're going to have less people. Unfortunately, it's the jobs where we most need hands-on that AI is not going to solve some of those problems. We need nurses more than ever. We need healthcare. We need plumbers and mechanics. We need people who are able to put their hands on things. Those are not the jobs that are going away for sure. But
yeah,
I do think smart companies are, I mean, I'm having these conversations, literally, I'm having these conversations with HR leaders on a weekly basis where they're saying, okay, what are the skills that we're going to need to build so that we can keep the workforce around, like so that we're ready for whatever transition comes in the future.
mhm,
So I do think the job impacts are going to be significant. I think they're going to come in pockets, right? Like, I don't think we're
okay,
talking about slashing 10% of the workforce. I think we're going to see, quarter after quarter kind of roles changing. And I see a lot of companies who are already doing the good work of not having to eliminate roles by moving people around, shuffling them, focused on internal mobility and like transforming their own workforce. But I do think we're going to see some fundamental
yeah.
shifts
I just
that,
saw, I think LinkedIn had an article yesterday where white collar jobs of certain kinds that they had white collar jobs was kind of the umbrella, but then there was three or four categories underneath that, and they were talking about how the job postings for those were down like 20% or something like that. And yeah, hey, if your job is typing on a keyboard and moving a mouse around, you might want to you should be paying attention to what's going on.
yeah, for sure. You should you should be
It,
you should be building some net new skills in the durable
yes,
space. You should be
yes,
doing it with AI.
totally agree.
This is where you disrupt yourself or you get
Yep.
disrupted.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
yeah,
I couldn't agree more. I was just going to say, you know, I've asked that question that I asked you with just about every guest over the last 4 or 5 months, 6 months. I basically started asking the question ever since ChatGPT 4 came out, and I used it one morning and said, "Oh shit, the world just changed."
yeah,
But what was I going to say? Oh, you know, tell me how you feel about this prediction. I do think we're going to see lots of jobs affected And I think eventually new jobs will be created. There'll be different
Yeah.
things that we can't even really foresee right now, right? Like just there'll be creation, I think. What I'm worried about is the speed of this change is coming so fast that there'll be this short, messy period before we get people retrained and regrouped through companies like Guild. And they'll be like, and so there will be a short term messy disruption before things become okay. That's kind of what I'm worried about. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I do think I want to go back to the last topic. So I was popping up a research paper that I read last month that I think is really good. So here's the headline. This is from Lightcast. They're a economic model software. The number of postings for top AI related occupations, software developers, systems engineer, data analysts. These are the jobs that are being most impacted. Non-tech jobs, writer, SEO specialist, researcher, product manager, technical sales rep. Those are some of the jobs. I think that that disconnect between the two. So the question you just asked, I think we're already in some of the messy
Agreed.
pieces
Agreed.
right now.
Agreed. Yep.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not too disruptive, right? Here's where I think it's messy. I don't think it's messy necessarily from a like large scale what's happening across the economy. I don't like that's not what's happening. I think where it's messy is in boardrooms, right? I think where it's messy is
Okay.
senior executives trying to make decisions about what they're going to adopt and when, and how much risk they're willing to take on and where,
Mm.
right? Like there are going to be things, there are going to be areas like insurance where it just makes a ton that computational need in the AI space. You're going to want to move there quickly. But they've been in this disruption for a really long time from a technology standpoint.
Mm.
So I think the messiness comes from boardrooms who are trying to make decisions about where do you invest first, where do you accept risk, and what do you do with talent so that you're ready for whatever is
Right.
coming with
Yeah.
both with all of those things. I
Yeah.
think that's where it's going to get messiest.
Yeah. If and I want to get into Guild and have you do an overview, but yeah, in general,
Yeah.
you said it well. Like you need to what are the right words? Pivot a little bit, retrain yourself, get some skilled trade. Just make sure the easiest way to think about it in layman's terms, as far as I'm concerned, is this. Whatever it is you're doing for a living, pay attention to how well the large language models can do that task.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you play around with the large language models and they're doing it faster and better than whatever you were doing, then you're in trouble. Like you need to pay attention. That's the best way to think about it.
Yeah.
You know, for example,
Well,
if I had a young teenage kid, all my kids are grown, but if I had a teenager saying, "Oh yeah, hey dad, I'm going to be a copywriter," I'd be like, "No, no, you're not."
yeah, no. I mean,
Yeah,
even the field that I'm in, a lot of my role at Guild is really to understand what is happening in the market, right? I've been a
yeah,
practitioner in the
yeah.
HR space. I've worked at, with different products, sat on their advisory boards, and my job aggregating data out of reports and trying to find the novel insights that I can bring back to my company and then, in a thought leadership capacity, share with our customers and prospects. Um, I saw really quickly that we could get to maybe 60% with a GPT of things that and here's where the danger comes, Steve, is a lot of those things, those areas for me in particular, they're areas that I would have asked like junior level analysts around me to take a first stab at. Hey, can you read this report? I would love your thoughts. Give me a first pass. Go ahead and draft some language
Mhm,
on
mhm,
how we should talk about those things. Now I'm going to a GPT. We have one behind our firewall at Guild. And I'm going to the GPT. I'm feeding in the information and I'm asking it to take the first pass at that thing. And so there's a little danger for somebody like me. It's more like speed up my work and then that 60% version, then I can just take and massage. What really is concerning for me is that you don't have those some of those junior level positions start to disappear, where people are building the skills they need to become your leaders in the future, right? You kind of hollow out the middle.
Mm,
The shape of a lot of workforces is actually a bit
mm,
like an
mm,
hourglass.
mm,
You have a
mm.
large frontline workforce, you have
Yes.
a
Yep.
fairly senior level of
Hmm.
individual contributor, but there's like this really narrow movement into those kind of jobs. And that's where I think the risk is with AI from a white
Agreed.
collar.
Yeah, that's a good.
You
It's a
can
great way to look
hollow it
at it.
out.
Yeah, totally. Totally appreciate that explanation. Last thing on that on this AI topic there is I always love it when I'll get my friends and we'll be talking about something and they'll say, "Yeah, well, Chat GPT or whatever, Gemini, it's not perfect every time, and it misses this or this." I'm always like, bro, okay, so what do you say? You're saying that human beings are perfect with all of their decisions, but you're gonna run ChatGPT through 1,000 test questions and it misses one, and so you think that's a
Yeah,
reason
yeah.
not to use it? Like, what are you talking about? And by the way,
Right. I've sat and had drinks with you when you complained about your coworkers. Please
y-
spare me. The
yeah,
GPT is not
spare
working
me,
for
like,
you. Yeah.
please. I was like, and by the way, bro, it's gonna get better.
Right.
So
Right.
anyway, hey, give us the for people that don't know Guild, will you
Yeah.
give us the elevator pitch? Tell us a little bit. By the way, it's guild.com, but go for it.
Yeah. Guild's mission is connecting human potential with the jobs that drive growth for them. So we do that in a number of different ways. We're a multi-product company. We've got products that are focused on connecting the workforce with education. So we work oftentimes with HR and business leaders, and they come to us and tell us, look, we need talent for the future in these areas.
Okay.
And we have a learning marketplace, these programs that are coming from reputable sources from universities. Sometimes they're academies that we're building together, and we essentially make those available to the workforce. The employer makes that financial investment. The employees make the time investment to build
Okay.
those new skills and credentials in the areas where they're most needed, and then those folks go back in the workforce. I think one of the coolest things about Guild learners is we track their mobility, what happens with their jobs inside of the company. And they're seeing, 2.5, 3x increase in internal mobility in their own companies over their peers who are not learning with them. So Guild's job is really to help folks connect with the continuous learning that they need. And look, what people are not looking for right now is a video that they watch where Guild differentiates itself is that like you actually have to have some experience. You have to have projects. You have to learn. You want to be exposed to
I
people
like it.
who've done it well themselves. And
Mhm.
so the way that we structure those offerings, it should really lead to the workforce transformation that gets folks ready for the future. So that's what Guild does. We offer that through, some companies have formal education benefits and we do that. Some folks are just looking for, hey, I need to upskill, 300 people who are in our logistics area into new practices of what they should be doing, and we do that. And then sometimes we take those same programs that are in our marketplace through our academy, and we help build that out so it's really tailored for a company itself. So those are some of the ways that we show up, and we've got really smart people who understand people who are looking at the economic data, what are the skills that they're going to need, and can then partner with the companies to help them make the decisions about what their talent strategy should include. So that's Guild, connecting humans, especially frontline employees, with net new skills to help build a workforce ready for the transformation that
I
companies need
mean,
right
yeah, your business model and your marketing pitch is ties into everything we just talked about for the last 45 minutes with the changes.
now.
By the way, who's your target customer? I mean, are you large cap or are you what who are you targeting?
Yeah, it's everything. Just to give you an idea, we have programs that we're running with companies like, Walmart and Target on the high
Okay.
end, right? We
Okay.
live in that
Okay.
Fortune 10 space.
All right.
We also are launching with companies that have, 2,000, 5,000 employees. That tends to be the range that we live in. We just
Okay.
recently went kind of to mid market and lower, but it's
All right.
working out great, and we're able to service some companies that are really looking for something innovative that they don't have to manage in house, and that's what we do. top
So
to
let's talk
bottom.
about that. Let's talk about that mid cap. You know, so what'd you say? How many did you say? 2,000 employees?
Yeah.
2,000?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So let's say you're at $500 million company, maybe. I'm guessing. Will that be, is that too low? 500 million revenue? No, no. If you're a customer, is that too low? 500 million?
Oh yeah, I knew you were. No, it's not necessarily too low. No.
Okay. Let's just say it's at 500 million. So having been a CEO of a couple of companies before I started Riderflex, I know exactly what goes through my mind when somebody like Guild walks through the door and is trying
Yeah.
to sell their services, right? I know exactly what goes through my mind. Number one is none of my people have time for this stuff. Okay,
Sure.
they're all slammed. The second thing that goes through my mind is how much does this shit cost? Because I'm already on a tight
A CEO who thinks about the cost and how it's going to hit a P&L? I've never heard of
Uh,
that.
yeah. So how, yeah, what do you tell them when you get those? Because I'm sure those are your two pushbacks right away, right? Time, money.
Yeah.
What's your pitch?
I mean, my quick answer on time is most of our programs, not everybody is like, they're not assigned and required to go through. These are people who do it on their own time.
Okay.
And Steve, I'm listening to you, and what I hear, I imagine you are a very busy man, and somehow you are spending time in like online courses
Good
and
point.
playing with new
Great
platforms.
point. Good. Yeah,
So
good
I
point.
think the people who want to learn will make the time. And I
Oh,
think one of the things that I
yeah.
watch from the stories of our learners, they're like single moms. You would not believe. Let me tell you a little bit about our learners. It's over 50% women. It's something like 60% caregivers. It's something like 65% who are first generation access to that kind of higher ed or credentialed learning space.
How about that?
So I think these are people who are kicking ass every day at really hard jobs where they're dealing frontline with customers and all the way to, ML, machine learning like programmers, right? You have the full spectrum. And we find that in every company, there are folks who raise their hand and say, I'll use my weekends and nights to learn
Wow.
myself. And you are only, as a CEO, this is not like a per head cost that you're absorbing. You pay for the people who want to invest their own time, right?
I see.
And not
I
just
see.
not just that, but like, and I'm not going to get into all the details of Guild's business model, but there's a risk in a lot of those programs that like until there is a course cutoff date, you don't pay for it at all, which means it could be weeks into a program and they say I'm out, and you
Ah,
as the CEO, you're not, that cost isn't hitting your sheet. It's
how about
variable
that?
across programs, so I
Okay.
don't. Again, that's so on number one and number two, it's about people committing most of the time their own time. There are some companies who are like, we're going to carve out time. That's great. But these are people who are putting their own skin in the game with time,
I see.
which makes it make sense for an employer to say, yeah, I'll make that financial investment. And especially when I mean, the data is in from our perspective on
Hmm.
retention rates of people who
Hmm.
are in those programs.
Hmm.
For a lot of companies, the retention rate for people who are enrolled in these programs means it's like it's an ROI positive investment for
Okay.
them.
Yeah.
So it
Very good.
doesn't worry them so much on the finances.
I think
I
you
mean,
guys are I think you guys are set up to explode even bigger than you already
yeah,
are based on everything that's
that's good.
going on in the world right now. I mean, you're in a great space and a great spot. You know, sometimes execution and talent is all part of a business, but you know, timing is also critical. And right
It's
now, it's
everything. Yeah, timing's
you're
everything.
it's a good time for you guys. Matthew, thank you very much for being on the Riderflex podcast
Oh, thanks for the opportunity to chat.
and sharing your story. Guild.com. And you can also, by the way, Matthew loves it when people ping him on LinkedIn, especially if you send him a connection request and then try to sell him
Come on
something right
now.
afterwards. So send him a bunch of connection requests and then try to sell him something. It's Matthew J. Daniel, Nashville, Tennessee. Good looking guy there. You'll see him.
Oh,
Thank you, Matthew. Appreciate you.
Steve, thank you. Have a great day, man.